The old man on the right is the only real person in this room, and he was dying when he asked to be let in. Everyone else here is perfect. The Virgin's hair falls like poured light. The child on her lap is smooth as ivory. The bishop on the left wears a cope stitched from a small fortune in gold thread, and the knight on the right shines so brightly you can see the whole room curving across his armour. And kneeling in the middle of all that perfection, an old man in white, bald, heavy-jowled, pouches under his eyes, skin folding over his collar, painted with an honesty that borders on cruelty. His name was Joris van der Paele, and this painting exists because of the most expensive thing he ever bought. What he bought, whether the seller kept the bargain, and who finally delivered that is this story. The answer is coming, all of it, I promise. First, stand where he kneels. The room looks like a church, columns, stained glass, a carved throne under a canopy. But it is no church that ever existed in Bruges or anywhere else. The Virgin sits exactly where the altar should stand, she has replaced it. And she is painted larger than life. If she rose from that throne, her head would pass the capitals of the columns. This is not a scene from the world. This is an apparition, staged for one visitor. On the left, Saint Donatian, patron of the old man's own church, holds a wheel set with burning candles, the emblem of his legend. On the right, a young knight sweeps off his helmet the way a courtier doffs a hat, and opens his other hand toward the kneeling canon, presenting him. He is St. George. The old man's name, St. Joris, is George. Across the knight's chest runs a strap bearing letters you can find yourself. Adi, Onai, Adonai, Lord. He is mid-introduction, presenting his namesake at the court of heaven. 3 details before we go further. The canon has stopped reading. His spectacles are off, folded in his hand, a finger keeping his place in the prayer book. Notice the line at his left temple, a swollen, branching vein, rendered with the same patience as the pearls on the Virgin's crown. And stay a moment on George's armour. The polished metal reflects the room you can find the Virgin and Child bent into the curve of the helmet. But the shield slung at his back reflects something else, something that is not in the painting at all. Let it shine. Its moment comes late in this story. Now who receives a welcome like this? Follow the money. Joris van der Paele was not a theologian. He was never even ordained a full priest. He was a scribe. Decades in Rome in the papal chancery, copying documents, stacking up church incomes the way other men stack property. Around 1425, he came home to Bruges rich, with a canon stall at St. Donatian's prestige and income, light duties, a paperman grown old on paperwork. Then, in 1431, illness. The chapter's records excuse him from services. He is past 60, in a century when that is deep old age, and he is not getting better. And a sick man of the 15th century did the arithmetic every sick man then did. Death was not the danger. Purgatory was the cleansing fire, and no one could tell you how long yours would burn. One currency was believed to shorten it, the Mass. So in 1434, the dying canon converted his fortune into liturgy. He founded a chaplaincy at his church, a daily Mass, 3 votive Masses a week, and a requiem sung for his soul in perpetuity. In his final years, he added a second foundation, folding in his family, ending each requiem with the penitential psalms. Then he hired the most famous painter in Northern Europe, Jan van Eyck, painter to the Duke of Burgundy, to fix the arrangement in oil. The proof is still attached to the picture. The original frame, painted to imitate bronze, carries his statement, Master Joris van der Paele, canon of this church, had this work made by the painter Jan van Eyck and founded 2 chaplaincies here in the choir of the Lord. At the corners sit his coat of arms, crossed baker's peels, Palla in Latin, a pun on his own name. Even the joke is notarized, so the record tells us what was paid. It does not tell us what was delivered. Carry that question with you. The delivery is the last thing we will see after everything else. Because first, the painting has a confession to make about that face. For 5 centuries, people read it as old age, honestly observed. Then, in 1981, the painting was given a medical examination. A Belgian rheumatologist named Jan de Quecker studied the Canon the way he would study a patient in his clinic: the swollen, rope-like artery at the temple, the puffy face, the thickened old hands, and published in a medical journal a diagnosis across 5.5 centuries: polymyalgia rheumatica with temporal arteritis, an inflammatory disease of the elderly. It exhausts, it aches, and in its cruelest form, it strangles the blood supply to the optic nerve. Some clinicians who have taken up the case since argue that this is precisely what was happening to him, that the man holding reading glasses was slowly going blind. There is no biopsy for a painting. The diagnosis can never be certain. But the deeper point does not depend on it. Van Eyck painted symptoms. Offered a dying patron, he refused to heal him by so much as a brushstroke. The vein at the temple was a choice. Later centuries had less nerve. A photograph from 1905 shows a sore on the Canon's lip, and after a 20th century restoration, it had quietly vanished, an observation a dermatologist later put on record. Restorers cured him of the one thing Van Eyck insisted on keeping. Why insist? Because honesty was the entire point of the commission. This is the man being presented to heaven, and the presentation only counts if it is truly him: sick, tired, half-blind, real. In a room full of painted perfection, his ruined face is the credential. Which brings us back to the shield. In its polished curve stands a figure, a man, upright, positioned in the space in front of the painting. Where a viewer stands, where a priest would stand. No document mentions him. For 500 years, as far as the record shows, nobody did. Only in the mid-20th century did scholars lean in and agree on what most now accept. It is Jan van Eyck himself, reflected into the scene as though present in the room. The art historian Douglas Brine went further. He worked back through the church's documents, the frames' inscriptions, and the memorial customs of the age, and argued in a study that won one of art history's major prizes that this panel hung as a memorial marking the Canon's own burial and foundation site. The priests he paid would have sung his masses in front of it, his painted face watching his own requiem. And in the shield, the painter stands among them. Van Eyck had reason to care about being remembered in that church. When he died in 1441, before his patron, he was buried under the same roof, a short walk from where this panel hung. Painter and canon, waiting together. So now, the delivery. What did Joris van der Paele buy? Eternity on subscription. Masses for his soul as long as the world lasted. And for a very long time, the seller kept the bargain. He died on the 25th of August, 1443. The masses ran. Priests who had never met him sang for him through the rise of Bruges, through its decline, through the Reformation storms, generation after generation, 3.5 centuries of paid-for prayer. Then the world he had trusted ended. In 1794, a French revolutionary army confiscated the painting and shipped it to Paris, where it hung in the Louvre as a trophy. In 1799, the occupiers went further. They demolished the church of St. Donation itself. The cathedral came down to its foundations, the canon's tomb gone, Van Eyck's grave gone, the chaplaincies, the daily mass, the requiem with its psalms stopped forever. Everything the fortune had purchased was erased to ground level. The purchase failed, but the painting survived it. Bruges fought for years to reclaim the panel and won it back in 1816, returning it to a city whose church no longer existed to receive it. Today it hangs in the Groningen Museum, a few streets from the empty site. And here is the reversal the Canon never planned. The panel he ordered as a marker for the real eternity became the eternity itself. Millions of strangers have now attended. Joris van der Paele studied his book, his folded spectacles, his fur-lined sleeve, the vein at his temple, more souls than all his masses ever gathered. George's hand is still open. The helmet is still raised. The word Adonai is still being spoken across the knight's chest. The introduction has never finished happening. The old man is perpetually, permanently being presented. He paid for eternity twice. Only the painter delivered. Stand today where the cathedral stood and you find a hotel. The church's excavated foundations sit in its cellar. No bells, no choir. And in the museum, the painted church is quiet too. Donations' candles have burned for 600 years without losing a millimetre of wax. The stone church has been dust for 2 centuries. The painted one has not aged a day. Somewhere inside it, a sick old man kneels with his place kept in his book, waiting to be received. The Mass for his soul has never ended. It is simply silent now.